and welcome everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world dialing in. Our today's webinar is about best practices on how to increase customer lifetime value. And I'm very excited to have Musa Hanhan with us today to share his knowledge in this field. Some housekeeping: if you have any questions, there is a Q&A area where you can ask any questions throughout the presentation, and after Musa finishes, there's going to be some time to answer questions as well. If the questions fit into the flow, I will ask them straight away, and Musa will respond. Otherwise, we'll keep them and respond at the very end. So let's start with the introductions. I would like to welcome Musa to introduce himself first.
Oh, thank you, Alyona. Thank you for the opportunity for having me today. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you are. So my name is Musa Hanhan. I'm the managing director for Experiente, and Experiente is all about helping organizations design better experiences and connect those experiences to customer value. There is a gap in the current CX practice, not showing value. And our approach is about showing the CX value to management in a nutshell. That's what we do. Back to you.
Great, thank you. So my name is Alyona Medelyan, and I'm one of the founders and the CEO at Thematic. We analyze customer feedback to help companies improve customer experience and improve customer lifetime value. And why I'm excited about this webinar: CLTV is a financial metric every CEO knows and wants to improve. And I'd like to help the customer experience and insights community to understand how to leverage CLTV when presenting their insights. I'm also interested in showing how you can find drivers of CLTV hidden in customer feedback and track them over time. So throughout the presentation, there are going to be a couple of examples where you will see some screenshots from our product and see how Musa's presentation relates to what we do. So Musa, over to you. What can people expect from this webinar?
Yeah, so I would want to cover 3 topics. Identify the right customer lifetime value model for your organization by going through a list of consideration. I'm not going to go specifically on the formulas because there are many of them and they are specific to a purpose. Second thing, I want to cover what's in the customer lifetime value metric, because they are underneath that multiple metrics components. They are directly involved in the calculation or supporting that. And the third, which is it's really important for us, understanding the forces behind increasing, because anybody you are working in this field, management would ask you how we can increase the customer lifetime value. So we want to go over that just to understand that, because then you can tell the story around what's benefit, not just the metric, but also connecting to the value. So just to start, the customer lifetime value is a predictive metric. And this is important to understand that, because it really shows the customer present value worth to the company. And the benefit of it just boiled down to gain insight to most valued customers. I mean, this is where I think it's important to understand that doing this, it's really allowed to look at it from the customer level, from the segment level, as well from the corporate level, and depends how you want to, and we'll be going through a little bit more detailed around the consideration when you start setting up the model in terms of where you want to go, because you can do those 3, as I mentioned, customer level, segment level, or corporate customer equity level. You can do all of that. It's just that you need to understand that each type is require sophistication, and then extended the formula for customer lifetime value. So let's just start with the first one, is the purpose, because a lot of times, sometimes we get hung up. The management says, hey, we need to do this, and everybody jump in it and they're doing it. But this is really important about just start asking the question. What's the purpose of using customer lifetime value? Because that will give you understanding around, are we focused on understanding the customer level, individual customers, and getting to know their values on each? Or are we going to aggregate it to a segment or a group of customers, similar characteristic on that, so we can target them? And an example would be a marketing campaign. Or a third, it's aggregate all these numbers up into the corporate level, and you get the customer equity. And this is quite a bit in interest right now around the VCs community, because that will give the real value of the corporation. And understanding that is important as well, if this is a driver for the management or for the corporation. And we'll go a little bit in that. The second thing, it's a very as well a critical piece of building the model, is you want to bring and assemble a cross-functional team from marketing, sales, product, finance, accounting, you name it. The reason why, because you will notice, and if you are already in this space, all the data are everywhere, and each department or each group, they are own or responsible for the piece of the data, and you want to be able to bring them all in one place and define the understanding what's the customer life value, because then they are the stakeholder as well as your ally. Because one of the things that we need to think about it as we go with this is it is just a calculation. The customer lifetime value, it's the straightforward, it's the whole thing behind it. And that's why the adoption of that metric, it's slow and tedious, and it takes some time. But having that ally team that allow you really to start thinking about it in a broader sense and more strategic sense. The third element, it's defining. If you haven't done that exercise, which is the biggest exercise in the company, is defining who's your customer. I just want to make sure that we need to differentiate between when marketing define the customer, or sales or product, versus the company define, because then you have a unified definition that everybody aligned to it. So this is where it takes some time understanding, because then you understand the customer, who they are, because they are, especially on depends on the market that you are in, as we're going to go and see that, is that you want to be able, if it's B2B, it might be multiple players. And so you want to make sure it goes to an aggregate level to the customer, or individual as B2C and the consumer. So you want to understand that. And that's where the understanding where you are playing in which industry, that allow even go further, deeper understanding the characteristic of each industry and each verticals. And you are in B2B could be easier, because sometimes of these B2B majority are subscription model or contract model. So it's easier to calculate, for example, the retention rate, versus consumer might be, you need to derive it from other meaning to do that. Understanding back still in the customer side is that you want to be able to know where they are in the journey with you. Are they just got in, onboarding, existing, or they left you and they are coming back? So how you each looking at this segment, understanding the journey that allow you to do that. And that's part of the segment as well. Understanding the segments. Not all your customers are equal. So you want to be able, and also understanding how you want to characterize that. It's really starting from the persona, understanding the defining, and then you try to group that. It could be a segment within the segment. Another point of consideration while you are looking at your model is identify your customer behaviors. This is where the qualitative metrics and data comes in the picture. I know a lot of the people doing the lifetime value metric, it's focused on the economic or the quantitative metrics versus qualitative. So it's understanding the customer behavior. And now with all the machine learning and AI that allow even to segment and categorize and themes these behavior that even you can create an index around it. Identify the time that you're going to play with that. You could do it annually, quarterly, monthly, daily. It depends on your business. I mean, some of the e-commerce, maybe you want to do that shorter period versus longer period, where B2B, where you have an annual or maybe 2-3 years contract. Definitely would be slower, a different way of doing things. Considering the risk for the business and uncertain, because that's where you're going to be calculating, working with your finance to calculate your discounts and net value. You do all of that and you start building these formulas that fit within your business. You start as well doing the testing, A/B testing, because one of the things that most likely you want to be able to look at different the formulas where it fit your business, as well as understanding the component and the, especially the, what I call the variables in terms of the numbers that needs to be able to work on, like a discount rate that you want to play with that and make sure it does fit within that. Because the more you fine tune that formula and the outcome get better and it get trusted. And that's where in the end, you want to communicate that. It's not just to have it in one group and just stay there. You want to be able to rally the cooperation around it.
I have a quick question, actually, Musa. I know that from our Insights community that a big challenge is to bring all of this customer data in one place. And you mentioned it as well. You need to get buy-in from different teams so that they actually share the data with you.
Yes.
Is it a requirement to have all of the data in one place, or can you find some workaround? What have you seen? What worked?
Yeah. Well, I mean, having everything in one place is ideal, but let's be realistic in our business. Databases are everywhere and data everywhere, globally now, even not in one. So understanding that, I mean, I've seen quite a bit of now all these new tools and solutions that bring these disparate data into one warehouses, and then bring that, and then top of that, you build your, have dashboards and set of tools that allow you to aggregate those data. So I ideally to have, but there are tools out there that really bring in this. Is more important about this before even talking about, the data and all. It just really that who's driving this. You want to have this initiative or this metric to be driven by corporate. And the reason why I'm saying that, because then you're going to have all these different departments in which they have those disparate databases, bring them all in one place, because then in this case, you can access to all data and allow to have that collaboration to look at it, and then you can aggregate it as you go, because some of the data require work. I think this is where it gets underestimated when people start working on this project. So yeah, I mean, that's the next level. So the next level, I want to just, just to get that a little bit highlighted, it's that those are metrics. I mean, revenue is owned by, sales and finance. So they have all these numbers. So you want to be able to look at those numbers, and the same thing, you want to look at the acquisition and the type of average profit, margin. I mean, and then you, of course, by customer, by segment, you aggregate it all to the company, so you can have those layers you build on that. The same thing with retention. and the cost, the challenge on the cost, it might be a challenge because, cost of acquisition or retention sometimes is not straightforward. Then you want to be able to look at those and figure out, working with the team, cross-functional team, as well as with finance, to start figuring out the formula and the percentage that you can do it on the customer level, aggregated level, and up to the customer equity level.
And there
So
are,
those are.
Sorry, I know that there are different ways of calculating all of these metrics. And what's important here? Is it consistency?
Yeah. So one of the things that when you put the formula, so they are straightforward, the formulas are straightforward. It's just the consistency of looking at it. So when you start, that's when important, as you're building the formulas and looking at the data, we're most likely going to find there are some probably missing data, and you want to bring these together. One thing is that A/B testing allow to look at these as you go and formulate that. So it's one of the things that important when you do. You need to compare apple to apple, and B, you want to be able to make sure the model and the formula that you are using fitting with the business you are in. So there are things like the inside of how to calculate that. It's important because then if you are B2B, it might be calculated a little bit more in terms of understanding the numbers versus the consumers. Sometimes you have to have the best guess, but working with a finance and the team cross that allow to everybody agreeing on, because if people in the corporate, they don't trust the metric, and guess what? They are not going to support it. So it's important that you are going to make sure these numbers and back it up by all the data that's behind it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
So looking at these, so there is the economics metrics, as we mentioned, and then there is the loyalty metrics. This is where the referral, this is where the share of the wallet, repurchase, number of repurchased, the last time they purchased, the size of the purchase. So all these things, they are in the system, but they are somewhere, all of them somewhere. So that's where you want to bring these numbers, because they are the numbers that you want to look at, that the one you want to see what's happening. Might be they are historic numbers, but also to give you a sense of how you're going to build the future. And not forgetting, this is where I want to highlight all of that. Because we are measuring customer lifetime value, think about it, we are coming from the customer, even though we are calculating from the corporate side of the house. But think about it, this is the customer. Trust, empathy, quality, effort, all got involved in this. And this is important because this is where the behavior and the attitudinal metrics that allow to see customer sentiment, the habits, satisfaction, as I mentioned, trust, empathy. So these are social influence now, the index, that's impacting the metric. And these are things that really it looks at it from all these angles. When you build this model and have all these metrics and components that allow you to see the big picture. In addition, don't forget about is the competitors. And some of the management would want to see comparing their customer equity metric to other competitors' metrics. So make sure that those are the level of understanding this model, how it's going to be built. And if we dive a little bit further, so you have your now metric, you started, you tested, and you're getting the numbers. And management, they like what you are showing, and they ask you how we're going to move this metric up. That's usually the default question, right? So just looking at, as I mentioned, we are dealing with customers, and customers are humans. So understanding that allow the idea behind it, or the forces behind it around, since we know the acquisition and retention and refer. So if we looked at the acquisition, we need to ask the question, why the future customers want to purchase from us? That's a question that needs to be answered, because then you can understanding not just the economic, but also the behavior, understanding what's triggered that. The first thing was say, oh, I like the product, I like the service, it's matching what I need, it support that. Awesome. And sometime, and probably all of us here, we buy things based on our friends and family and colleagues' reference. They tell us, hey, I bought this one, I like it, go try it. And then I'm becoming a new customer. So this is understanding these behavior and drivers allow us to kind of trigger and tell the story around that. Retention, there's a lot, but I just want to highlight a couple ones. Retention, it's hard to keep the customers engaged and keeping them with the company and the brand. By having the brand as I am as a consumer, as a customer, is the brand knowing me and solve my issues? Because that's where the trigger, there's something triggered that the more they are doing that I feel appreciated, I feel belonged. Same thing, I'm spending money, I'm getting my money worth. And these are things that looking at underneath the drivers on each one that allow us to see that how we can drive up the retention on the referral. So if I am got what I need from the company, their product and service match my need, they treat me well, and they solve my problem when there's an issue, and I'm getting my money worth, and I am becoming more and more loyal to that. I'm connecting now. I have that emotional excellence service, and by delivering personalized services, allow me even to talk more about the brand. I mean, these are not soft things. They are hard, because you can look at these numbers as well as looking at what are driving it. And you can test that as well during this period when you build the model. So I just important that looking at this and to see, look at it bigger, what are the drivers? And then you can start looking at it a little bit deeper. And I want to just highlight some of the things that I noticed last year, and everybody as well in the COVID-19 episode, and look at how things moving and how the dynamic of the customer lifetime value is moving. Because one of the things that I want to drill down on those three things here, because there's a lot of packing around it, because delivering connecting experience is not just nice to have. It's became more and more important, and it is part of your brand. And if you look at what the customers and consumers are saying last year, that's an indication to say, hey, 76 indicate they are keeping their business with the brand. When I see, I appreciate it. When I belong to this, when they solve my problem.
What does it actually mean, a connected experience?
Meaning that kind of more around, it's not just generic experience, it's more personalized experience, it's more around me. The brand knows me, they know my preference, they know when they contact me, when not to. They know where, and they anticipate my needs. This is where they're connected. And also, they show me they are appreciated my business. Because one of the things that a lot of time businesses, they are more, their mind switch to sell. But then after a year, you're selling all of that, how are you going to keep the customers? So you want to be able to. So those are things that are important to look at that. Empathy, that's another one, huge. And I think people getting hearing quite a bit of it, especially in the customer experience space. But it's important to understand that. Think about it, is that 71% of the consumers saying that showing empathy, last year, especially on the pandemic, earned their loyalty. That translates to money. That translates to something. The same thing as well with trust. 93% of customers trust the company. They would recommend it. Back to where we say refer, back to talking and bringing new customers to the brand. So I don't know how much I want to emphasize this, but this is important, that how to connect all of that. And I understand some of the we don't have all the pictures or all the data. And then this is why I want to highlight these things, because then you'll be aware, you start measuring, start tracking those non-economic metrics, because they are the one gonna drive understanding the drivers of the metric, but as well as telling the story inside the company.
And something that we've seen with our customers is that while many still track customer satisfaction, so CSAT or NPS or customer effort, there are several companies that are starting to track trust. So basically they straight out ask in their surveys, do you trust our company? And do you think it's a good approach, or are there other ways of understanding whether your brand is trustworthy, empathetic?
Yeah. I mean, the surveys, it's a similar that. So I don't want to go on that, but it's important to understand, even when you ask that question, I think it's important to understand what, you want to be asked in a way that drive that, not because the minute you say, hey, do we deliver empathy, or do we deliver a trusted experience? It's like, how true the customer will tell you. But to know really, the real effort, it's through their verbatims. This is where the analytic data analysis comes in, because this is where you analyze their actuals. They are saying it without telling you directly. And that is much better, because then it has a better value, and it's better. And now with all the advanced analytic and the metrics, it does give you that sense and give you that number as well. So I wouldn't recommend it saying that on the surveys. I think there are better way of getting the same feedback, the same understanding without asking the questions. Yeah, it's one of those things that sometimes over surveying and questioning, and after a while, people they just ignore it, and you don't. You're not going to get the value that you're looking for. So one of the things I talking about this one and looking at it, it's around, I want to translate the quote that I just talked about it to something more in the financial benefit. One of the things I want to do is demonstrate that. And this is here, there's an online calculation. I simplify it just to make the point here. And understanding that, I run 4 scenarios. If you do nothing and you spend, let's say your a gross profit, it's the customer spend $100 and 50% are cost, that's $50. Acquisition cost, you spend $1,000 and you gain 100 customer, that's a $10, and retention similar. So and the average customer life value 2.4, meaning that the retention is about 67%. And then we do the discount, he gets the $70. So the net customer lifetime value for that customer is $70. Just changing the acquisition, if refer those 100, refer 10 with the same cost, now your cost $9 and you gain $1. If the customers stay a little bit, less than 2 months, guess what? You gain $2. If you stay both and refer, you gain $3. Now, if that customer now, they stay, they tell their family and friends and colleagues, and they buy extra $4 above the 100, you gain $6. And then of course you do the math. The point here around that, just moving and the drivers moving a little bit just to highlight this, it will show you that there's a benefit in delivering connected, empathy, and trust. It's about the customer. Again, the metric, it's about the customer. And sometimes we miss that point when we get into calculating and using all this economic metrics. We miss the point how to tell the story, why this number is changing up and down. And one of the things that important that here is really when you start building this model, you want to be able to bring all this behavior, loyalty, attitudinal metrics and data that you can look at how you connect the dots. You can explain your number. The more you explain your number and the forces behind it, the more you can be able. And that's where I think Thematic did a good job in building that and looking and showing that through that data allowed to see and highlight the things that you can see. So, I mean, Alyona, I mean, I know I'm a user of Thematic in the past. So, but I mean, how you, with all the data, the transaction that you see 1,000, if not million daily, how you see the customer discuss the value they are getting from the ended, and open-ended feedback using the thematic analysis?
Yeah, and as we were preparing for this webinar, I actually found some examples to share. So it really depends on the company, but ultimately there are definitely people who speak directly to price and saying it's too expensive, or it's too expensive compared to other options that are out there, or they actually speak about the value that they receive. So for example, here we're looking at a screenshot from a anonymized data from a company that provides cable TV. So people are paying subscription to basically watch different programs, and you can see that the NPS is -35, so people are not very happy. The main complaint is price. 35.9% complain about price. And then the second theme is programming, and we kind of click into the programming to see what about programming. And here you can see the specific attributes of programming that customer value, therefore they talk about it in the first place. You can see the relative importance of, let's say, movies versus golf, and the main issue, too many repeats. And they might be saying it in many different ways. So you keep showing the same programs, or I'm seeing the same shows repeated. But the power of AI is to basically figure out that all of these examples of complaints mean the same thing, tied to this particular theme, and then tied to the metric as well. So you can even calculate the impact. What's the impact of having too many repeats? And if we can look at the next slide, another thing that we've done is actually linked the themes that people are mentioning to how much they spend with the company, which is one of the variables used to calculate CLTV. So here we have an example of a person who gave an NPS of 4. They're on the basic sports and movies package. They're one of the highest paying customers. So annually they spent $1,127. And their feedback is an NPS of 4, and then we have movie channels, and the new movies are too few, and the repeats are well overdone. It's a very roundabout way of saying you keep repeating the movies. So by basically looking at themes and the average amount of money that people are spending, you can immediately see what's the risk if we keep doing this. we're probably going to lose this customer because there's so many alternatives out there where you can choose your own movies. You can watch YouTube, you can watch Netflix, and you don't have to watch a repeat. And so you kind of need to look at competition, what's happening in the market, what are other options, and what are customers saying, and what's the importance of taking their feedback on board and acting on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just proving what we were talking about. It's that it's a high value customer. They give you negative feedback, and their sentiment is negative, and there's a reason why. So they came in, they thought they are matching their needs to what the company is delivering. It's not. They are not going to get the money worth. They are not emotionally connected now. They are not. They are going to tell their friends, like, you know what, this is becoming a useless channel because you see it once and you're going to see it all over again and again. So these are things that are happening, and I think more important, just looking at rather than have and this is where some of them I seen the mistakes, that until the customer leave, you'll realize what happened. Well, but all along the data is available for us. It's there. And that's an example that you can see that and right away and look at it, how you can recover from that. So it is, I mean, this is a topic that I love it because it gives you, the both word in terms of the data analytic and metrics versus how you explain things from the behavior and the habit and, and the loyalty of it. I want to switch a little bit because some of the, discussing the example that you just brought, Alyona, and then as well, what we have seen, there are strategies, and this is where you tell the story. This is where when the beauty about the metric is when you set it up and you start working and you start seeing and start delivering the results and looking at it. Now you start telling the story behind it. And one of the things that you want to do, how to improve it, how to, to the example here, proactive, anticipate, and happy customers. These are important. The minute you get the sentiment from, the example here we just saw at the cable company, then you'll be able to address that. In addition, one of the things that people focus on the surveys and they forget other channels. And now they are, kind of like, you don't do the survey or you go and listen to the social media. You want to listen to all channels that you are offering the company and bring all that data to understand what the customer they are saying and how they are feeling. And out there are tools now that are available to do that. And the third, as well, when you are doing this one, understanding the efficiency and the of delivering the experience that you want to understand it, not just to say, hey, I know my metrics, the operation metrics, but you want to bring the customer experience metric with the operation metrics that allow to see a better picture, to see where the understanding, and then tie that together. So those are the things that I want to highlight, just an example about how to improve an example, the customer lifetime value by just identifying the issue and then you proactively looking at that. So Alyona, do you have any examples on how other companies are addressing this? Because I know it's a hot topic right now with all the stuff that say, hey, how we can look at the data and how we are managing that and how we can address that.
Yeah, so there's two steps, as you mentioned, listening to all of the data across all of the different channels. And we have customers for who we pull things like complaints, their online reviews, their community forums, their live chat, and as well as their surveys. So if you think of live chat, it's another way of customers saying, I'm trying to do something on the website in a self-service way, I'm struggling, this is not working. So it's another way of them saying where they don't actually want to contact you, right? They want to do it in their own time, and it's really a drag to be able to do it. So you need to be able to reduce the number of these live chat interactions. So how do you do it? By fixing things that they they are complaining about.
Yeah.
And likewise in the survey, so in that example that we've seen before, if repeating movies is an issue, so what happens next once you've identified that there is this issue? You kind of need to track how your actions are influencing customers over time.
Yeah.
So I think on the next slide, we have an example of.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the one here. Yeah.
This company actually took an action in Q3 2019, and they immediately saw a drop of 2 points in volume. So how many people actually complaining about too many?
Yeah.
And here at the bottom, you can see the improvement in terms of impact on NPS. So their NPS was lower than it could have been by 2 points, but the less people talk about it, and the higher is the NPS, and as a result, the impact is
Yeah.
not as negative as it could have been. So
I mean, that's how you track it. That's how you see that. I mean, again, you want to bring the data and you want to understanding that. That's why back to, this is a good example because now you are connecting, you have the model, you are seeing it, you understand behind it, the driver, you are fixing things, and then you have a tool that allow you to see the improvement as well. And those are what I like about this. It's really bringing both economic metric, the loyalty, the behavior metrics, as well as the operation metrics. So allow to see the bigger picture around the improvement. And that's where you want to take that and you tell your management, and then you show the value, how things working. Cool. So one of the things I think another question I brought up as we talking to customers and look at this, to say, hey, how to maintain my data? I mean, I have to say, I don't want to underestimate that. It's a big challenge. It's to maintaining this mass data, putting it in a organize and map that to your model and to your metrics that allow you to see and to look at it. And the more important thing, you want to look at it from the customer, as like everything you want to do, it's from the customer. It's around the customer. It's around looking at it, because that it's the mapping. That's where you start looking at it, and the data, all these mass data around everywhere globally. Then you can start building these tool and application that allow you to bring that data and update it and manage it. So you can see all around the customer, from the interactions, the reference, the profile, the behavior, to all the economic metrics, like revenue, and of course, all of the stuff that you are around the revenue and how you calculate that, and down the cost and how you calculate that. These are things that each one is going to be looked at its own component. I call it component, because then you can manage that and to see what you have, what you don't have, and how you're going to track it, so you can keep that. And working with the finance to ensure the data and the discounts and the metrics that they are, especially on the economic side of things, are there and accurate, and so you can be able to use that. And I just want to highlight, life is not still. There's a lot of changes and a lot of companies buying companies. So M&A as well, or you have multiple line of business or multiple brands within the big enterprise. So all of that you need to be considering. That's why it's very important that you want to be able to manage that and continue doing that. So I want to give a couple example here, because one of the things that we've been talking about it is that you want to start building dashboards that allow you to see, and I want to provide a couple examples here around that, just to see the level of effort, because I know you might say, hey, that's too much. This is, I am one person.
Yeah, sounds like a
doing that.
full-time job for somebody to maintain all of this.
Exactly. It is. It is. I just want to make sure it's not. I don't want to underestimate this. I want to make sure set expectation. This is. It takes time. You want to look at it more strategic. You want to build it in a way that can get buying. So you can have the IT. You have other departments help with you, and then also to maintain. But this dashboards, there's another one here. It's beautiful because then you can see, and then you look and you see the improvement and you see what's happening in that, and you can update it all the time. It's not one-time project that you do in it, for example, this campaign or that campaign. It's really about a corporate level. The more you build that, the more you have trust in it, the more management they will use it. And eventually it needs to be next to the revenue metric. This is the customer metric. This is the customer equity metric that you want to be able to show. I like this example here because you can even you can do what if scenario, and this is where A/B testing and allow you to start seeing things. So I mean, these are out there. There's a lot of stuff out there. It's just a matter of where your focus area and what you want to do. Again, so I want to just bring this one a little bit more to a closure here, because we did talk quite a bit about the metric and behind it. I think Rob Markey from Bain summed it up nicely on a strategic level under his in his Harvard Business Review article around the strategies around how to make sure this metric is not just you calculate it. It's like you want to connect that metric to the company. And that is important because then you can be able to look at it holistically. And there he laid out 4 strategies around it. Develop robust customer value management processes and tools. We've been talking about this one. Maintaining the data, the dashboard, the metric, managing the metrics, the formulas, what's in it, behind it, the drivers. So all of that needs to be looked at it. Combine design thinking and loyalty earning technology. And this is something that really around design. I don't know how many people are familiar with the design thinking, but it's really the practice of observe customers and to be in their customer shoes, looking at from the customer, what they are feeling, what they are thinking, what they are doing. You get better understanding of the customer. Combine that with artificial intelligence and data, you can tailor now these experiences, delivery to your customers. And that is where I was talking about connected, personalized experiences. The third strategy, organize around customer needs. Again, that's something that it's obvious here to really bridging the silos. And your team that you are working with, as we mentioned, you want to bring cross-functional team. That's exactly, it's really to bridge and reduce the fractions to the customer. End of the day, it's the customer who they are looking at you. It's not just marketing, not just sales. And the fourth one, lead for loyalty. And this is really aligning the employee and organization around the value of the customer and loyalty. So this is I highly recommend it to read this in terms of looking at it. It gives you a view. This is where moving from only calculating a metric to broader and connected to the organization as a whole. So I think I'm concluding here.
Yeah, what are some key takeaways? It's been great.
Well, so the takeaways, you need to have a purpose of using customer lifetime value. Understanding your most valued customer. This is where the exercise that allow you to see who they are the most valued and focus on that. Understand the forces behind driving the customer lifetime value. This is, as we talked about it, is not just the economic forces, but also the behavior, the attitude, and loyalty forces. And lastly, it's not one-time thing. You have to manage and monitor results so you can start improving on it. It's not like you do one project, it's a practice. And by the more you do that, the more you fine tune as well, and you learn from, and becoming a metric that, as any metric that corporate manage, which is like revenue or cost.
Great. Well, thank you, Musa. And I just want to ask whether there are any questions from people in the audience. Feel free to type in the chat, or.
And there are a few resources here.
Yes. One question I have, would you say there are different approaches depending on the size of the company? When is it even worthwhile looking at this?
This is a good question, because when is worthwhile? Because one of the things that, regardless of the company, is small or big, it's really understanding what's the goal and the purpose of that. And even the small, probably they have less data, and they can start basic. They can start at the customer level, or they can do aggregated level. But I don't see the size as a way, but it's important about how you are managing your customers, because Gene Bliss always preaching your customer are in assets. So you want to be able to manage your assets. And this is important, because that, from that angle, understanding that your customer are on the top, and they are in the center of your business, then you want to know their customer lifetime value. So it depends on the philosophy and the maturity of how they look at that. But we are in the customer experience practice, and we believe strongly about that, customers as an asset, and I want to be able to see that.
Yeah. Another question just popped in. What's an effective way to gain written customer feedback? I guess it's relating to customer lifetime value. Any things that you've seen that work well?
Well, I mean, there's quite a bit. You work with the customer retention. It's the hardest probably to manage, because now you are maintaining the customer. You want to keep them, and not just that keep them, but you want to get them engaged so they can buy more. They can buy and extend as well. So one of the things, the feedback, it's really talking to them. Talking to them is not just sending them a survey once a year, which is nice. Then you can see, at one point, the relationship. But it's more than that. I think it's you have to have an engagement strategy. And the brands that you see out there, they know how effective around engagement. They know when I like to get an email from them. They know not to send me email when they have their preference. They understand me. They are not pushy. They are more providing experiences to me. So, I mean, each brand, it depends on my value to that brand. They are going to be able to deliver on these things. And that is important, because when I mentioned one of the things, this metric will give you understanding of your high valued customer, because you want to make sure that your high value customer stay. You don't want to let them like the cable company here. So yeah. I want to make sure that you want to stay. And to do that, it's a matter of engagement through survey, listening, checking in, understanding what they are. And this is one of as well, like, when they buy and they are 2-3 months, let's say, non-consumer, they haven't done, you want to check and see if there's anything they can do. So there's quite a bit of this is a practice about that. It's not just a marketing, it's the whole company needs to engage in that stuff.
And in your new company, Experiente, can you share a little bit? Do you work with companies to help them with understanding CLTV? Is this kind of a core offering in case people want, feel like this feels like a lot? I will probably need help with this.
It is a lot. And what we are offering, sit down with them, look at their priority. Is this metric a good fit for them? I think it's important that we need to ask that question. And what's the purpose of that? And then from there, we walk them through, set it up, look at this. It's really more important about setting up the strategy and roadmap and plug in the data that they have. And if they don't, they have to be able to see how we can manage that and where's the best look at this. And then bringing the qualitative data as well in the mix that allow to see the big picture and tell the story. At the end, tell the story what's behind the numbers. Yes, we are happy to help on that.
Great. Well, for anybody who would like to get in touch with Musa, the email address here at the bottom of the slide. And you can see my cat just jump. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining the webinar. It's always great to share new knowledge. And thanks, Musa, for explaining what CLTV is and what to consider when working with this metric. Thank you for joining, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Great. Bye.